Welcome back to my G1 Retro Reviews. Today, we're taking a look at the original Transformers series episode, Attack of the Autobots. In this episode, Megatron turns the Autobots into his evil minions, and it's up to Bumblebee and Jazz to save their friends and return them to normal. This episode begins with the Decepticons attacking the Autobots' base. But this turns out to be a distraction, so Megatron and Starscream can use Megatron's new invisibility spray and infiltrate the Ark. Although, if they have this invisibility spray, why not just have all the Decepticons use it and then attack the Autobots and they wouldn't be able to see you? Oh well, cartoon logic. So, Megatron and Starscream sneak into the Ark and sabotage the Autobots' recharging chambers, which I'm guessing are sort of like the G1 equivalent of the CR chambers from Beast Wars.
Give me the personality destabilizer!
The Decepticons retreat, having accomplished their goal, and I like how Rumble slips out of Ratchet's hands by transforming into his cassette mode. Very clever use of his alt mode there. The next morning, after all the Autobots use their recharging chambers, Megatron's plan starts to take effect as the Autobots turn evil. And you can tell that they're evil because all their normally blue eyes turn red. Because we all know that all good Transformers have blue eyes and bad ones have red. So what does that make Transformers with green eyes? But speaking of Beast Wars, aren't surprised that Megatron in that show never tried something like this in that series. After all, he did manage to turn Rhinox evil, twice. Why not the rest of the Maximals? Like maybe planting one of those Predacon chips that they used to reprogram Maximal Protoforms into Predacons into their CR chamber. I think the closest we ever got was the episode Call of the Wild, where the Predacons stole the Maximals' rectifier coil, which caused their beast modes to take over, and Tigatron had to help them get back to normal. Not unlike Bumblebee in this episode, although I'm getting ahead of myself. So when Bumblebee gets back to base, Blue Streak forces him into one of the recharging chambers, but luckily Jazz throws a shake weight at him and knocks him out. We then cut to the Autobots attacking a military base.
Halt! Look out! There's nobody driving those vehicles!
Now, I find it interesting that this soldier is played by Michael Bell, who plays Prowl in this series, but is arguably more famous for playing Duke in G.I. Joe. And the Autobots just happened to be attacking a military base? Wouldn't it have been a cool crossover idea if this was actually a G.I. Joe base? And there were G.I. Joe characters in this episode. Oh well. Bumblebee goes to try and stop Optimus and the other Autobots at the military base.
Hold on, I'm coming!
I guess Spike didn't learn his lesson from the last time that he went with Bumblebee to a military base under attack. Meanwhile, Ratchet and Hound are sent to steal some plans from Dr. Harding.
You're launching my solar power generating satellite? Wonderful, I'm on my way. Enemy Autobots. What could they be after here?
And I find it kind of funny how they have to crouch walk through the hallway here because they're so big. But she miraculously escapes by jumping multiple stories and landing on an umbrella. Why didn't she just fall straight through? Again, cartoon logic. Bumblebee tries to snap Optimus out of it, but he just gets slapped for his trouble. Aw, poor Bumblebee. This also kind of reminds me of how in The Last Night, Optimus was also turned evil there, and Bumblebee tried to shock him back to himself. By talking. Again.
Bumblebee, your voice. I have not heard it since Cybertron fell.
Permission to speak, sir.
Permission granted, old friend.
You speak now?
Too bad G1 Bumblebee doesn't have that card to pull. Back at the Autobot base, Sparkplug constructs some kind of gizmo that will change the Autobots back to normal, which fortunately works on Blue Streak. Jazz then goes to use it on Hound and Ratchet.
Hold on, Hound!
Great, another one.
Wow. Dr. Harding was thrown in a dumpster by a giant robot at a brick wall. And she not only survived, but got up and sprinted away. What is she, Wonder Woman? Hound and Ratchet are returned to normal, but the Autobots at the military base are still on a rampage. By the way, I know these are supposed to be yellow barrels, but don't they kind of look like Captain Crunch cereal? Man, I must be hungry. Okay, finish this review first, then breakfast. So Hound uses his particle beam gun, which isn't that what Samus Aran's blaster is, or am I thinking of someone else? But anyways, Hound uses his gun to launch the doohickeys at the Autobots, turning them back to normal. But they leave Optimus for last.
What's Prime doing?
He's splitting into his 3 components.
Now, this line always kind of puzzled me. Does that mean that Optimus has sort of a split spark? Kind of like RC in Revenge of the Fallen? Also, what does that mean for Optimus's death in Transformers the movie? If his main body dies, does that mean his trailer dies? And Roller too? Is Roller not a separate entity? Also, I seem to recall that in the IDW comics, Optimus pulled some kind of trick on Megatron into thinking that he was dead by uploading his spark into his trailer, or something like that. I don't really have a conclusion here, just something to think about. So Bumblebee saves Optimus and he gives him a big hug. Aww, so cute. But the episode's not over yet, because the Autobots still have to stop the Decepticons.
If you can disconnect a satellite, I can take it into orbit.
How? You don't have rocket feet like movie Optimus. Or maybe you do. But even so, it seems like my boy Jetfire is doing the actual heavy lifting here. Optimus just chucks the satellite into space. And we end this episode with Optimus giving Bumblebee some pets. Aww. This was a fun episode of G1. It was very interesting seeing the Autobots be evil, even just for a short time. It's also funny how I just noticed that the Autobots' attitude adjusters seem to be a recolor of the Decepticons' personality destabilizer, meaning they probably function similarly, or at least Sparkplug reversed engineered it. But I would be interested to see what would happen if one of the Autobots' personality adjusters was planted on a Decepticon. Would they turn good? Speaking of heroic Decepticons and evil Autobots, this episode also kind of made me wish that there was a Shattered Glass episode of Transformers. Obviously, this came out decades before Shattered Glass was even a thing, but still, I'd love to see a Shattered Glass episode of Transformers. Any Transformers show. Also, did you know that this episode was the first Transformers episode written by the late great David Wise, who wrote some of the best episodes in G1, in my opinion. I actually got to meet David at a TFCon. I even shared a table with him at the staff dinner, and we talked a little bit about cartoons. The funny thing is I didn't even know it was him. I didn't recognize him because of all the weight that he lost, which sadly was probably a result of the cancer, which I don't think the fandom knew that he had at the time. And he would unfortunately pass away from it a couple years later. David Wise was a great writer. He worked on many classic cartoons, such as He-Man, Jem, Rescue Rangers, Mighty Ducks, and Batman the Animated Series. But probably the series that he's had the biggest hand in was the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon. And what he's also kind of known for is occasionally reusing some of the same story ideas in other shows. Specifically, the wiki states that this episode is similar to the TMNT episode / The Evil Turtle from Dimension X, as both episodes' climaxes include a rocket chase, which, okay, they both have a rocket in it, but it's not like he reused the entire story. The episode wasn't about the Shredder turning the Turtles evil and April having to turn them back to normal. Although both episodes do include an evil version of the respective show's protagonists. I'd say that's a bigger similarity between the two. Although apparently there are future David Wise episodes that will also have recycled plot points in other shows. So I'll have to try and remember to examine them if I can. Again, this was a really good episode, even if it did leave me wishing that they had done a couple things differently. Well, what about you? What did you think of this classic episode of the original Transformers series? As always, let me know down in the comments. Remember to like, subscribe, and do all that other fun stuff. And it's interesting that this episode featured invisible characters and the Autobots turning evil, because I'll see you back here next time for the next episode of G1 Traitor, an often overlooked episode in my opinion. So I'll see you back here next week for that.